Welcome everybody to the latest episode of Celebrating Entrepreneurship with Haatch Ventures and one of the leading growth companies that they are invested in. And for those of you who've not seen the series so far, well, you've missed a lot of good stuff and you can catch up on the website. But what we're doing in these series, these interviews, are really we're celebrating the importance of entrepreneurship. These are the men and women who are creating the jobs, income for the economy, and goodness me, we know we're going to need more income to pay for the burden of the pandemic, but also increasingly solving some of society's kind of problems with real genuine innovation. So I'm really pleased today to be joined by somebody from Haatch Ventures, Mark Bennett. Good to see you again, Mark.
Hi Lawrence, nice to see you again.
And a really interesting company, and all of them have been, but this one genuinely is, and we'll get into what it does in a minute. And that's so I'm joined by Tom Szirtes from a company called Bodyswaps. Tom, good to see you.
Thank you.
Now, let's sort of really kind of, Mark, sort of start with you. We're a couple of episodes in now to celebrating entrepreneurship. How do you think things are sort of developing from a Haatch perspective?
From a Haatch perspective, or from the series of Celebrating Entrepreneurs, Lawrence?
Well, I think both really, because they're sort of intertwined. We are talking so far to companies that Haatch has invested in, but more generally, do you think the awareness of entrepreneurship is beginning to come back sort of more mainstream as we go through the sort of pandemic, and we're in early into 2021?
Yeah, I think it's always a big topic, particularly within the UK. I think, to be fair to the government, the investment in the EIS scheme over the last few years has been wonderful and has really helped bring capital into really early stage businesses. And the work that both the government have done in terms of that initiative and bodies like EISA and other groups as well that are promoting investing in entrepreneurs, there's a fantastic thriving community around making more awareness in terms of supporting entrepreneurs. And then if you marry that with a pandemic and an economic crisis like COVID-19, clearly a lot of that news comes back to the forefront of people's conversations about how do we get the economy going again, how do we support small businesses, and how do we help that driving force and that energy within the economy. And we talked before in the first couple of episodes around this celebrating entrepreneurship, early days in the series, but so far really good. And we really loved having this conversation with yourselves and the Bonhill group, and also Dan Rodwell from Growth Invest in one of the episodes as well. So it's great to be having these conversations with other like-minded, energized groups that want to help celebrate entrepreneurship. So we love that kind of energy and the conversation around it. From a Haatch perspective, we've been in this startup world now for 5 or 6 years. We've had the Ventures EIS business now for the last 3 years. We're delighted where we're at, to be perfectly honest. We've had a very strong 2020, despite the turmoil that's been going on in the UK and the global economy. We've raised capital, we've invested in a ton of wonderful businesses. One we're going to learn about a lot today, Bodyswaps, that are really pushing the frontier of corporate training and education through virtual reality, which is a very exciting space. So we love where we're at. We love our investments and the entrepreneurs we're engaging with. And like I said, I just wanted to say thanks again for working with partners like yourselves and Bonhill to actually help promote some of the businesses that we're working with and some of the great work that's going on within this industry.
Lovely, thanks for that, Mark. And as you say, really, the kind of the energy comes from entrepreneurs. So it's really good to have one of them with us. So Tom Szirtes from Bodyswaps. Tom, one thing I know a little bit about your business. What's fascinating is I don't think the name of your company really kind of explains what it does. So just tell us what you do. Mark,
it could be misconstrued, I guess. Yeah, we don't offer any kinds of surgery. So what we do, essentially, we provide an immersive solution for soft skills training. So what we're doing is combining immersive learning solutions, AI-powered behavioral data, to provide a solution that allows people to level up their soft skills, aimed, quite often at the corporate and education sectors. because one of the things that one of the most in-demand skills from employers right now is soft skills rather than technical. And as we see ourselves in the context of the fourth industrial revolution, where AI is going to take away more of those technical repetitive jobs, soft skills is where where it's going to be. But the big issue of soft skills is how to train people up on it. And it's not easy. It's not something that you can really learn in a classroom with a spreadsheet and or a PowerPoint presentation. It's kind of skills that you need to practice in a space. And the way that's been deployed in the past quite often has been through face-to-face coaching. Let's take a bunch of our employees out of our business, put them on a one-day course with a coach, and hopefully at the end of that day they're going to come back better leaders or understand diversity better, etc. Now, on the other end of the scale, you have kind of e-learning, which is kind of go off and answer this multiple choice questions and play a little game, and that's not really very effective. So really the thing we're solving is how to do soft skills training at scale but make it effective. And that's what Bodyswaps does. And where the name comes from is kind of an aspect of our learning framework, which we allow people to embody another person in order to see yourself from another person's perspective. And that's where you swap bodies. So at some point in our training, quite often, we will record you talking in virtual reality to a virtual avatar, and then we will allow you to see yourself from their perspective, and from that you get to self-reflect and hopefully improve your abilities.
And it is a very powerful way of kind of learning and seeing ourselves, which is obviously very, very hard. And I came across the business in the context of diversity and inclusion sort of training in the workplace, which, as you say, is a soft skill. But just go back a little bit, kind of where did you and the team kind of get the original sort of idea from, and kind of how did you start?
Well, it's quite interesting actually. Before that, there's three co-founders, myself, Chris and Julian. Chris and Julian had their own VR agency called Somewhere Else, and I had my own VR agency called Embryonic, and we actually worked together to kind of do a demo of this, which was inspired by the work of Mel Slater, who's a well-known researcher in virtuality at Barcelona and Stanford University, and he'd done some research into how embodiment can change your perception and people's behavior. And one of the first ones that we did was actually was a training demo for nursing. So it's psychiatric nursing, and it was basically the idea was like, if you're talking to vulnerable patients, last thing you want to do is send someone who's untrained to talk to someone who's mentally fragile and possibly making the situation worse. And so we used this format and built a proof of concept for a client who's interested in this in order to test out the process. And one thing that we realized, both coming from an agency background, was the cost of developing content in VR and generally across e-learning can be quite expensive, and so what we thought was that there's an opportunity there on a number of fronts to make this more cost effective and scalable, and that can be done through two ways. There's one, developing a platform that speeds up the development of this kind of the content development of this kind of material, which is one thing that we've been doing. And my role is the CTO in the organization, so that's kind of my responsibility to build out that platform. And then the second aspect of it is there's obviously a commonality between lots of businesses' needs in terms of soft skills, and we want to, and we are developing off-the-shelf content. That means that organizations can essentially purchase or license our content for their employees without having to develop it from scratch. So we have a kind of a dual strategy between kind of like doing bespoke work built on our platform and developing off-the-shelf content for more generic subjects like diversity, for instance.
Now, do you think of yourselves as kind of entrepreneurs? And if so, obviously, the concept's been, as you just said, inspired very much by the work of Mel Street. Yeah, do you think of yourselves as sort of entrepreneurs, and what does being an entrepreneur perhaps mean to you and to your other two founders?
I mean, I speaking from my own perspective, yeah, I mean, we are all entrepreneurs. As I say, we ran businesses before that. What does it mean? I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I've worked in I think I've worked in large organizations before. My background was in video games initially. I worked for companies like Sega. I was a consultant. And before I got to a stage in my career where I thought, you know, I would like to try this myself. And I think more for me, it was the challenge of it. To see how I would adapt to it. Having my own software company is something I'd kind of thought about ever since being a teenager. I was one of the kids of the 80s who got their ZX Spectrum and got inspired to get into this brave new world of computers, and it had always been in the back of my head to kind of do it. But it kind of took me, you know, a couple of decades of experience to really go, oh, I feel like I'm confident enough that I might have an opportunity to pull this off. And clearly, you know, there's an element of risk taking in that, because, you know, if I look around at a lot of my people who I grew up with in the industry, you know, they were in very quite senior positions in big companies, and clearly they have lots of responsibility in our life. But, you know, the kind of the things that they have to worry about probably are slightly different from what I have to worry about. And I suspect that's the same. You know, Julie and Chris have come from a slightly different background. You know, they haven't spent as much time in other organisations, so I can't really speak for their motivation. But I mean, generally, you know, we're motivated because we're excited by what we do. We want to have more control over where we're going, the kind of jobs that we do. The financial aspect of it isn't the primary driver of it. But clearly that's, you know, you put a huge amount of effort into any endeavor, and the hope is that you might get some benefit out at the end of it, but that's not the primary driver.
And obviously a lot of entrepreneurship is about, you know, sacrificing really kind of hard times. What are some of the sort of moments where you feel like you've really sacrificed? Obviously, as you just said, you know, essentially being an entrepreneur, you sacrifice the comfort of working for a big organization, particularly in the gaming industry, for kind of running it yourself and with your two sort of colleagues. But any sort of sacrifices been reduced to, you know, living off the credit card, anything like that?
I've been fortunate. I've always organized my life so I have a low cost of living, and that has enabled me to take these risks. And I think that's interesting when you talk about diversity in terms of entrepreneurship. I'm clearly managed to get myself in a privileged position where I didn't have to worry about not being able to pay the bills in 2-3 months. So I've always had a comfort blanket that allows me to go out and take risks, and I can only partly take any credit for that, you know, other than I didn't go out and spend a huge amount of money in 20s and saved up and stuff like that. But that's an interesting point about diversity in entrepreneurships and how risk taking is enabled. In terms of things that I may have sacrificed, I mean, it's mostly time, to be honest, more than anything else. For instance, you know, I had a quite interesting side career as a music producer and DJ, and I used to go all around the world DJing and stuff like that. And you know, I've part of having COVID that stopped that. Clearly, having the responsibilities of running company has eat up a huge amount of time. I also have a 4-month-old son, and I guess I could be spending more time with him than I do in the business. And it's very difficult to make those kind of judgments right now because of COVID, and the situation is very different. Like, I'm working from my home, so in some aspects I'm seeing my family more than I ever would. But there's definitely sacrifices, and I think the other sacrifice that you make is I think stress obviously is a big one for entrepreneurs. Loneliness can be one. Less so now, because I think, you know, if you're working an entrepreneur set with a team, that's great, and that's what we have now at Bodyswaps. We have a really strong team, that we can all rely on each other, and that's great. But previously, when I was running my previous business, I was the only owner of that business, and that was a huge amount to deal with, especially as not just when things are going badly, but actually when things are going good. That can actually be more stressful, because you're suddenly dealing with scaling up, managing expectations. So it's definitely times in the last, I've been being an entrepreneur for about 6 years now, 7 years. Definitely been times in that period where I've felt quite vulnerable and stressed, and but that's part of that. Also, that's part of the learning experience of being an entrepreneur, is to be able to is to see how you react under those kind of pressures, and I think that makes you a more rounded person, hopefully.
Lovely, thanks for that. Some really, really interesting thoughts in there. Now, Mark, let's sort of turn to you. Let's sort of start at the top. Bodyswaps strikes me as being slightly different type of business from perhaps the ones that we've talked about so far in the context of kind of Haatch and its investments. What appeals to you? What appeals to Haatch about Bodyswaps?
Actually, I think many of the fundamentals are similar to other businesses we invest in. They've got a vision of solving a problem, or changing or radically changing a solution for a vertical, for a sector, for a business. And that's no different from Bodyswaps, that are using technology to radically change the higher education and corporate training platforms that are used. And the fundamentals, I think, were wonderful before the world of COVID, and like many digital businesses, have just simply accelerated with the realities of where we're at now, and the reality that we're not going to go back to the way it was before. And I guess if you break down, like with Bodyswaps, Tom talked about lots of different ways that you can use VR training, from interview skills to inclusive leadership, through to managing conflict in an organization. They're all modules that Bodyswaps have built, content modules that help a workforce or an individual get better. And VR now is at a tipping point in terms of its cost to actually get into the technology. For anyone listening to this that wants to play around with it, Oculus have just brought out a new product, the Oculus Quest 2. It's about £300. So easy to set up, incredible experience to get. Whether you want to hit a golf ball on a virtual driving range, or learn how to be a better manager in a company, and like, you could even think about, we talk about interview training or media training. You do loads of stuff with the BBC. You're there on TV. You know how that kind of media training. In the old world, that would work with a company bringing in an external consultant, sitting down with 6 people, spending a day with them, sitting down there, recording you doing an interview, playing it back. How did you deal with that question? How do you deal with this? With technology like virtual reality and the content production and the VR worlds created by companies like Bodyswaps, an individual can go and do that over and over again in their own time. They can go through those mistakes themselves. You don't have to have someone else you're paying thousands of pounds off to be in the same room and hold your hand. And that technology, whether it's substitution or complementary, is incredibly powerful for an individual in a company. Couple that with COVID, the logistical inability to get together in a room and do that, then technology starts to be quite magical to change the cost base or change the efficacy of a training program for a company. So, like, Bodyswaps isn't that different from a lot. Other businesses are trying to reinvent that or change this or make that much more cost effective for organizations to work together. And like I said, the fundamentals of what these guys have built is great. And then over the last 12 months, that's really started to turn into major contracts with some really fascinating corporations and higher education businesses. So yeah, I'm quite passionate about this area because I love training and I love how technology can help training. And so as soon as we saw what Bodyswaps were trying to do, some of the areas that they were touching on, some of those experiences where they're using like AI from Watson IBM, enabling you to flip seats, see yourself back. Oh, did I really drop my head like that? Did I really say it like that? It's that kind of learning firsthand to see yourself is so powerful, and VR makes it very accessible and very affordable. So yeah, we're really delighted to be involved in Bodyswaps and really delighted to see how they've progressed over the last 12 months.
And just Mark, just carrying on, sort of two questions really. I mean, Tom raised the really interesting point about, being an entrepreneur can be can be a lonely exercise, even if you've got 2 or 3 colleagues around. How does Haatch in the round try and work with the entrepreneurs on issues kind of like that, and then more specifically on Bodyswaps? What have you been doing with them in the last sort of 12 months that's kind of helped move the business forward?
Well, many of us at Haatch have been through it. I've been an MD of a small 20+ person startup. Like, it is like, and then you've got to make decisions, and you're thinking about the people that are working for you, and it all kind of ends up at your desk. And then if you're one person in a bit, you're filling the bin and emptying the bin. There's no one else really to talk to as well. And as much as you can have a great network around your friends and family, they don't always want to talk about your startup. So one of the things that we really push from a Haatch perspective is that connection. So we invest in businesses that we like the idea. We invest in people that we like, and that intellectual connection and that shared passion for doing what the entrepreneurs want to go and do, coupled with our experience and the fact that we're people, and we like to put this smart money in so that we'll work and help, gives a foundation where we then build on the relationship. So that, like, if Tom or Chris or Julien from Bodyswaps are like, oh, don't know how to fix this, or stuck on this, we feel like we can be a point of contact that they can just talk to us about anything. Now, that might mean we need more money to get through this, or actually we've got this problem that we don't know whether to do this partnership or that contract, or whether our revenue model should be this. They're all things that Scott, Fred, Simon, and myself, like, between us, will have some level of experience. And then beyond that, we're also trying to create a network between the group of entrepreneurs that we have in the Haatch portfolio. There's a Slack group where they can ask each other questions about, I'm trying to hire this kind of developer, or I've got this kind of problem. And if often if one of the partners hasn't dealt with that, someone within our community of founders has had some experience or probably dealt with one of those issues really quite recently. And we hope that can just reduce the friction and make it easier for these guys to get on and build the product they want to build and build the business that they want to build. So it's a collection of those things, but at the heart of it is a real transparent, open relationship. We want people to put their hand up. We want people to shout. We want people to share their frustrations, and we just kind of want to help create their vision.
And yeah, I'd just like to add to that, it's we've been in the Haatch portfolio for a relatively short time so far, but it's already been immensely valuable, that network. For instance, I had questions around a particular topic, and actually one of the investors was an expert in that, and so I managed to take some time with him and discuss those issues with him. So yes, it's already proving very beneficial to us.
And Tom, what's the vision? Obviously success is partly about the return that is made for investors, but as you said earlier, that's perhaps not the overriding sort of drive. What would your dream be if we were having this conversation in 5 years' time, and I said, so Tom, looking back, what have you achieved? What would that be, do you think? What would you hope to achieve?
So, I mean, that's a good question. I would say that ultimately we want to be the best go-to solution for people to improve their soft skills. So that involves having the best content on our platform, being able to take the data that we have and we're going to gather in order to provide more and more effective feedback to our learners. And to do that at a scale that really can benefit the most people, and so it's building up the quality of our content, the features, being able to get into more and more places, and to drive down the costs in order to be able to scale the business ultimately. And if we succeed in that, then we've helped lots of people, and we've also added value to our company and also to Haatch. So we would have won both ways.
And do you, I mean, to both of you, Mark first, I mean, the training area is a very old school sector. Mark, do you consider Bodyswaps to be a disruptor in that way that expression is often kind of used. It does strike me as being a classic disruptor, because it's tackling the very almost 19th century way that training has historically been done in businesses.
Yes, but I mean, I think training is always evolving, and like you're seeing all sorts of courses that were traditionally held in the classroom, and plenty of kids at the moment are getting all their tuition through online learning. So, clearly the pandemic has been a major accelerator in terms of people embracing different formats or channels to receive the same education they got before. And there's an element of that with Bodyswaps. It's in harnessing a new technology like virtual reality. But when you start to play around with that technology, like the team of Bodyswaps are, you find new opportunities for making training work better. And like, there's nothing quite like seeing yourself back. There's nothing quite like being immersed in a situation. Like whether you're learning how to, bowl a cricket ball, hit a golf ball, play an instrument, anything you do, if you can listen and see yourself back, it's really, really powerful. And that helps that kind of repetition of learning. And Bodyswaps with a virtual reality application have actually managed to bring that really, really close to the individual. And like I said, the disrupting thing here is that this technology enables you to like almost democratize it and put it into people's homes really cheaply. Yes, I'm not saying a VR headset is affordable for everyone. It's £300, but it's starting to get very accessible to a lot of people. And like some of those examples that I used about like having an individual coach or having someone, like they can be really expensive, and it's hard to have hours and hours and hours when you've got someone else as a moderator or a supporter. And you look at the coaching app and some of the other products that Bodyswaps are building to complement their existing product set, and that enables other experiences to happen through the VR kind of training platform. So yeah, short answer, yes, I think they are disrupting, but I think really they're enhancing training using technology, and they're allowing businesses to deal with some topics that were much harder for them to train. Like as Tom said, they're not doing technical skills, they're doing soft skills. Soft skills take a lot more thinking, absorbing, ingesting. Why did I say that? How did that come across? Why did that language not land properly with the individual? Like sometimes people need to stop, go away, think about it, and then come back. It's not just remember, repeat, write it out again. And that's where I think an application like virtual reality and the content modules that Tom and the team are putting together are really powerful in terms of kind of making training much stronger for an individual and a corporation.
So Tom, really, it's enabler would be a better description for the business than disruptor. Sort of picking up on what Mark was saying there, do you think?
You can disagree with me if you want, Tom. You can disagree with me.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I mean, there's an element of disruption with any new technology, but we're enabling things to be done better. And one of the great things about virtual reality, which Mark's touched on, there's a number of things that are kind of better about using these technologies in this particular situation. One is the immersion and the emotional engagement that you have from feeling like you're in a real situation. When a character looks you in the eye and gets angry, you feel that a lot more in your virtual reality than if it's on the screen. So we start to engage your emotional analysis, your emotional part of your brain better. That could help to maybe bring on feelings of stress and how you can manage being stressed in a particular situation. Then there's a whole kind of element about your interaction with the learning material, which is enriched through virtual reality. So now we have data about where you're looking, you can move your hands, we can look at your body language. As we talked about, being able to see yourself back from a different perspective, being able to reflect really on did I do that? And then merging it with all the technology about machine learning and AI. You're talking through your voice, you're not just typing in a questionnaire. So all these things really accelerate the learning potential on these platforms, and that's really what's exciting about them. And being able to deliver them remotely is obviously is great, and sharing and the use of networks, for instance, like the coaching app that allows a third party to then give you human feedback on that, or maybe could you have a multi-user environment where you're actually dealing, some might be AI characters, some may be real people, and there's lots of, the possibilities are immense with these once you start digging into this area, and that's really what's exciting about it.
Fantastic. Well, I've been on the site and had a little go at the demo, and it is actually it's one of those kind of exercises that once you get into it, you kind of think, oh God, I'd love to do more on this. So, Tom, I wish you and the team, genuinely really good luck with the future. I think there's lots of exciting things to come. Mark, always good to talk to you. Thank you very much, and thank you to everybody for watching. Hope you found this as enjoyable as I have to do as an interview. Go to the Bodyswaps website for a look at what they do. It is genuinely sort of fascinating, and I look forward to you joining me again in the future for another one of the interviews with the Haatch portfolio companies. From me, Lawrence Gosling, goodbye.